McKay, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi.
Yay, I'm so excited. Woo! Let's do it. Let's cheer.
Loving in studio audience.
Oh yeah, it's like our own in studio audience. If we keep up the cheer, then everyone will cheer. McKay, I'm so excited that I've already had you on the podcast before, so we can just dive into the meat of our conversations. Let's talk about Free Britney. You are the person that taught me like what Free Britney even is, like what was going on with Britney. Will you give us the like kind of background of what the Free Britney movement is for the folks who have like no idea what we're talking about or who have heard it but don't understand?
Yes. So no tea, no shade, but also if you don't know, where the hell have you been? The end. Britney, our dear beloved Britney Jean Spears, Sagittarius queen of our hearts.
Vegetarians.
She, the princess of pop. Let's see. Quick little. First and foremost, Britney Spears, legendary woman with a career that's unmatched, singular and powerful. Which she started, by the way, when she was so young, so young, and worked so hard and is crazy prolific. So she, you know the story. She's Britney Spears. She did the Britney thing. She took over the fucking world. She was the most Googled woman on the planet for like 6 years when the internet was started. And then we as a culture destroyed her, or at least attempted to. What that looked like in context of the Free Britney movement, she experienced mental health complications during her basically blatant and overt abuse from the media and our patriarchal culture that commodified and harmed her. In a world just prior to having real conversations and resources, like in the same time period where Amy Winehouse was mocked for addiction instead of helped. That led to her career. Well, basically, it led to her being incarcerated isn't the right word, but I'm going to use it. Incarcerated, hospitalized for reasons we don't know in the year 2007, and by 2008, being court ordered to essentially surrender all of her rights as a legal guardian of herself as a legal adult to another person. She was adamant in that beginning when this happened. She is on record stating, "I understand that this is happening, that the state of California is going to legally be taking my rights, and can it please not go to my father?" It went to her father, who campaigned to get himself as the proprietor of her estate, at which point she surrendered all of her legal rights as an adult. Therefore, not being able to purchase real estate, travel, drive a car, make her own career decisions, release an album because she wants to. None of those things without the consent and guidance of her father, her dad, also in conjunction with an attorney, all of whom earn a salary for managing her estate. That's the short. And fast forward to now, it's 2021. Girl is 37, 38 years old, and Mama's still in conservatorship. Still can't drive a car legally. Still can't go fucking sell a perfume because she wants to. She has to get daddy's permission. That's the short scope of Britney Spears' Free Britney movement.
I feel like you told me about this like probably 2 years ago. And then this New York Times documentary came out about Free Britney recently on Hulu. So worth watching and horrifying to watch the media kind of eat her alive, which I think we all experience. Like, it's so interesting, right? Like, because Britney, like, is a little younger than me, but got real famous like while I was a young person. And so I'm like, I remember the space in my life where I was when she started having kids. And like now that I know more and more people who have had children, I know how much of a mental toll that takes with your hormones changing and how very common it is to have postpartum depression and also just the stress of having two babies so close to each other. They were like, she was pregnant 3 months into having Sean Preston for her second baby.
Yeah, to say nothing of, and I can't emphasize this enough because the documentary didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many great things to say about the documentary that you just pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's failing for me is that bitch was working.
Mhm.
Outrageously high performing, prolific career woman.
Mhm.
Michael Jordan levels of practice, showing up, and fucking like mastery of her craft.
Mhm.
I don't say to romanticize anything, but like what I didn't love about that documentary, what I loved about it is that they really humanized her. I think they held the media accountable in lots of ways. They really showed how awful we were to her. But no man in her position would be given a documentary where there wasn't like a baller reel for 10 minutes showing how fucking like ubiquitous and incredible her work and performance was. We got none of that. All we got was her personal life. And so from it's like so I think understanding like the mothering thing, all of that, those are all pressures that are real and human. And also this woman was like operating on a level beyond. Like woman was working her ass off. And then also, you know, Oprah describes fame as a drug. You don't know how you're going to respond. Or like alcohol, you're going to be an angry drunk, you're going to be a happy drunk. Are you going to be a sad drunk? Are you going to be an alcoholic? Are you going to be two drinks and you're good? You don't know. So when that's how Oprah describes fame after talking to all the people she talked about and also being Oprah. And so I think that added level that I of course cannot speak to and most of us cannot speak to of the amount of scrutiny that she was under and the level of fame that she had, like all of those things are a lot. And anyway, uh I think we've shifted now, and I think it's Britney that did it. I think Britney is like the workhorse that bore the brunt of our sort of like brutality on celebrity women, which is not to say they don't suffer plenty of things today as well, but like there are conversations about mental health. Like Selena Gomez is allowed to go to a mental health facility just to check in for anxiety, and it's not, we're not like destroying her. Demi Lovato is allowed to overdose from heroin or whatever drug it was, and is showered with love and respect from so many people. And that is a cultural shift that did not, that is brand fucking new. It didn't exist 15 years ago. And I think that like, you know, and now I am sort of overly romanticizing, but it's the perfect metaphor. She was the Jesus that got nailed to the cross to help usher in like a new way of being around these topics.
Yes.
And now it's time to fucking raise her from the dead and free her because she's very, very alive. But I think, yeah, that's like, there's so many psychological things. Like, as a fan, it's fun to talk about Britney because it's fun to talk about Britney. But also, if you want to just put a cultural lens on it and like diagnose and examine the way in which our world functions, the way in which these systems that operate function, Britney is like infinitely rich with opportunity to discuss.
I mean, totally. And also, I think that I saw some really powerful footage on Instagram.com of like
I've heard of it.
I've been radicalized so frequently by Instagram.com. But I watched, I mean, they do some clips in the New York Times documentary, which by the way could have been like 6 hours and was only one. But they like show the way the media and interviewers are just so sexualizing and really like patronizing and specifically to women. And I saw an Instagram thing where they just put clip after clip after clip in a row of these male reporters like sexualizing her or like focusing on her boobs instead of like her talent and her
We're asking like a 19-year-old Britney about her virginity in front of a room full of press. Like, what the fuck?
yeah, gross and unnecessary. And I think what is beautiful that's happening now today, and I think we can really see this as with like Billie Eilish and JoJo Siwa, like these the way these young people in get to have their own relationship with their fans. They don't have to go through a label, even though I think they both have labels, but they don't have to go through the media machine in the same way. They get a lot more control over who they work with and staying aligned with their values, which like, you know, is refreshing to see. And I really heard about it in Mariah's autobiography, which by the way is a must read. Have you read it yet?
You know, you're not the first to suggest it. And in fact, you have suggested it. And no, but it's on my list.
Someday.
I canceled my Audible literally like days before she released. So
Yeah.
I'm pissed about that. But we'll come around.
It's
And I've been told I have to listen to it because she's narrating.
it's her best performance yet. That's what Brian Tanaka, her boyfriend, said. Her best performance, and this is Mariah Carey, who I would argue, if Britney is the pop princess, then Mariah is the pop queen. I feel we've got queen and princess energy strong. And
well, so the only reason my eyebrow raised is I go, well, where do we put Madonna?
I mean, maybe the pop matriarch. I don't know.
I'm like, or if we're doing like a holy trinity, Madonna's the father. Is Britney Jesus and Mariah's the Holy Spirit? No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Anyway, keep going.
Anyway, but there, I mean, here's what we live in: a beautiful universe where like we can all be devoted Mariah fans and devoted Britney fans.
All be queens and princesses.
Yeah, exactly. And we're all, what's really beautiful these days compared to like even just a couple hundred years ago, royalty is something you claim. Your sovereignty is something you claim in yourself. That is not, I think each and every one of us is sovereign, and we're raised and socialized in systems that teach us that we are not valuable, and that is not true. I think that we're all kind of anointed to do God's work here on earth, whether our work is in our influence just from the day to day versus like being a Britney, right? Like where fame is both, it's a tool, and it can be either good or bad, right? Like kind of the drug, like Oprah said, like it can, and I'm so grateful. I wanted to be famous so young, partially because I just wanted things to be easier. I wanted to have an easier access to creating a base of customers. You know, I've always wanted to kind of own my own thing. I would never give my masters away. Like that feels like a nightmare to me, to sign a record contract, right? Like I couldn't.
I mean, listen, I have two little anecdotes about that really quickly. One of which is my own personal experience. Dear listeners, what I am not saying is that I was famous. What I am saying is that I had this wild experience when I was like 23 and 24, in which I was in a singing group that went on a world tour of 30.
Yeah. You've heard of it. You've watched Gilmore Girls. You know what the whip.
Okay. The repertoire is pretty lame, so don't go digging. But I got to live this experience where we were literally flown around the world for a year, treated like fucking kings and queens. I stayed in 5-star hotels in Dubai and Egypt and Milan. And I showed up, I was wined and dined, blah, blah, blah. The amount of self-destruction I did in that year is unparalleled in any other year of my life. It was like this crazy experience that was ultimately, for me, where I was in my mental health, so unsustainable. I spent the next couple of years like recovering from that experience. That's anecdote number one. Anecdote number two, on personal glimpses of some amount of what that drug might feel like, is I have a friend, one of my dear friends. When I moved to LA, I knew one person, Genevieve. She's an artist, quote unquote successful commercially artist now. But I've been with, when we showed up to town, she's a visual artist and she was brand new, fresh out of grad school. And I got to help her like be her assistant and do a bunch of shit for her early on. And once she got signed by a gallery, she was treated like a pop star. They're like, okay, you visual artist making work about your, her work is about being a black mixed woman of size. And she's the center of her work. It's her body at the center of all of it. It's self-portrait photography and video. And she hit, when her work came out in LA, it hit. She had buyers, and then she got signed by a gallery. And immediately that gallery wanted to dictate, okay, we have a show coming up for you, and this is what we want it to be about, and these are the shots we need. And I got to watch her be like, fuck no, this is my art. I'm the artist. And watch that fight go back and forth. And it was not great. Like, it was really hard. And she needed them, and you know, they were giving her the gift of like a stage, but she's the fucking artist. So at what cost? So watching her negotiate that was really complex. And she ultimately landed at a gallery that respects her and now is quite autonomous. But at every turn in our culture, we run into this. And I think it's especially true if you're a woman and if your body is the center of your work. Britney,
Mhm.
there's like this extra idea that you get to be controlled. We need this from you. You're fashion to us. So like what's next, what's hot next month? And that's crazy. The way that we do that to women is crazy.
It really is. And like fame itself is just like, that's the thing. That's why I'm grateful I didn't get famous young. I'm not even famous now. Like being in the public eye and having to grow like the way you need to grow to be like an emotionally functioning human if you were not raised in an environment that treated you with love and acceptance for who you were, which most of us were not. So it's like it's fascinating to me like how lucky I feel now, even though I don't always feel particularly lucky when I'm paying my bills, but like I feel lucky to not have that hassle because frankly, I don't want to work on bullshit. I don't want to have to manage a bunch of shit that is like the extraneous stuff of fame, right? And like obviously I don't live in LA anymore, so the paparazzi can't really find me, but like
I
it's so
mean,
heartbreaking to like not even be able to go to the grocery store or to Starbucks, which we know Brittany loves her Starbucks.
yeah,
Right?
oh, that's an interesting little connect you just did about the quarantine. If you're a celebrity, you kind of go into quarantine for like a lot of your life.
I read Jessica Simpson's autobiography after Mariah Carey's, which by the way, it's just the 1-2 punch of both of those is basically Tommy Mottola is an asshole and shouldn't get to
Is the producer?
he was the producer who like was married to he was the head of like Sony, I think, and he was married to Whitney, which or not Whitney, with he was married to Mariah.
Whitney was married, but not.
Yeah.
It's a whole other story.
Like, but in this time where like if you hear Mariah's growing up story and then this like record label guy suddenly rolls in and his like comes in with his domineering, he's very abusive. And but like it's just so unconscionable to like have some it's predatory. It's truly predatory. And then just like him working with Jessica Simpson, obviously he wasn't married to her, but like just his constant body critiques and making her like lose weight and wear crop tops that she didn't feel comfortable in and like comparing her to Janet Jackson, who's a whole different human and gets to have different genetics, right? Like it's so violent.
Jackson, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
It's gross. So
and also, it's gross. And also, that story you just told about that man is how the music industry was created. I
mhm,
mean, the one that we know. That's normal.
yeah. And I think what's beautiful now is that, I mean, this is what Mariah really touched on in her autobiography, which now I'm really seeing play out in the careers of JoJo and Billie Eilish and whoever else. Like, because now we own our connection to our fans, because we can have our own websites, we can have listservs, we can, I mean, obviously Instagram, you don't own that connection. I just want to remind everyone your Instagram followers are owned by Mark Zuckerberg and not you. So you always want to own a connection, at least an email list, right? Like something.
God,
Um,
that's
it's
an
so
email list also owned by Google. But yeah, you're right.
of all of the giants, Google is, I think, the most benevolent because it's more collectively owned rather than just a a nastiness. I don't know. I feel like you know
I
what I
know
mean.
what you
All
mean,
of
and I agree. I
the
know what you mean.
Google has more of a humanitarian even though it's not perfect working there, it's like of the people I know who work at all the big ones, like it's Google's the one that actually really cares about making the world a better place. And like I think the other ones, their privacy stuff is gross. Anyway, but
Pop it. Couldn't agree more. Whole other podcast. Let's
well,
go.
but I just like think it's important to talk about like how we live in a different time. So people can give to their fans and give access to themselves in new ways that are more satisfying. And I think we have to figure out how to divest. I know there's so many things we need to boycott, but like honestly, if you're paying money for tabloid magazines or like anybody who's paying money to paparazzi, like don't do it, you know?
Ugh. And yeah, you're right. I mean, as you're saying that, I'm thinking of a post Jessie J made this morning, whom I love, most underrated American pop star. She's British, but in America. Uh, she posted like, someone got some paparazzi shot of her with horrible hair, which is so funny. Why do we still have paparazzi?
Yeah.
She posted it alongside like 17 other photos of her with the guy that she was with at that lunch and like really humanized it and made fun of it and blah, blah, blah. Which immediately devalues the price that image can be sold for.
Yeah, totally. I loved Jonah Hill actually just this weekend posted.
I read it. I almost sent it to you.
Yeah, I posted it. It was like
Oh, maybe I read it on your who the hell knows.
it happens to me sometimes where I'm like looking at a thing and I'm like, oh, I want to send this to McKay, and then I realize, oh, McKay posted this.
Yeah, I relate. That's funny.
But yeah, like
Um,
Jonah Hill just taking that Daily Mail picture and humanizing it and like changing the narrative, because that's what we have now. We have access to our fans and we can own the narrative. Whereas in the early aughts, pop stars were at the mercy of the MTV machine in order to get in front of people who could buy their CDs. We don't even have CDs anymore. We don't even have to wait in line at record stores anymore for our drop.
no, which is both fabulous and devastating. Let's be real. I have a lot of thoughts on that, which we just don't even have to go into.
No, we
I love art. Okay, really quickly.
Yeah.
I love artists today who create events, because what an album release used to be was an event. You actually had to physically go. There was like this act, like it was a thing to stand outside. I remember walking into the Hot Record Shop in 1999, Costco, and buying the new NSYNC album, No Strings Attached. It was like there's a physical tactile experience attached, an event attached to that beyond Spotify. I love art. Yes, that's right.
For people listening to the podcast, I'm now doing puppet hands, like the No Strings Attached video, which used to be part of my boy band choreography, but it was too long.
Ain't no lie, baby. Bye. I love artists now who find ways of creating experiences. Like I remember 2000, Gaga was the master of this. Gaga brought this back to, in my opinion, in the pop world. She made fucking events out of everything. Every outfit was an event. Every announcement was an event. She was the one that came back and said, "Oh my God, I'm releasing my video on Friday," and started a countdown for it. And it was being premiered right before another show on television. Like she created a thing that was sort of phasing out. And I remember being in Miami in 2011, just after my college semester had ended. And it was a Friday night and Gaga was premiering Judas right before ET Live, and gathering around the TV and watching it. And there's something about that tactile experience of like a physical act being assigned to the thing that you're consuming that's so exciting. And when artists can do that, it's really awesome.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with freeing Britney.
It's fine. We don't have to be total. This is the Start Before You're Ready podcast. In my last podcast with Jeffrey Marsh, I was like, I don't have any white guy producers who are telling me what I can and can't say. So we just get to do whatever we do.
What does the label want? What angle do they want?
Exactly. The label wants nothing because there is no label. I'm the label. I want genuine connection, and I want us to have the goddess speak through us so that the people hearing, the people listening, I feel like it's all metaphysical, right? The people who listen to my podcast, whether this is the first time or the 100th, I guess it could be 100th time if you re-listen, but you know what I mean? Like the people who are showing up for this episode 78, they hear what they need to hear, right? And so if we're going on tangents, sometimes those tangents are someone else's liberation. And I think it's part of, I did a lot of coaching around my public, around media. It was like I took this media coaching thing because I'd never had on-camera training. I'd always just
I remember when you did that.
Yeah, and it was really meaningful to me to like just level up in terms of how I felt unafraid to be myself, because I'm in this like lifetime of personal growth, and as I know I keep getting better, I know I'm going to screw up on the way, but I keep trying anyway, and I know I do get better and I keep leveling up. And part of it is just trusting what comes out of your mouth, because I think God speaks through us, and if we're a spiritually aligned person, and whatever no one has to believe what I believe, but I believe my connection to God is why I'm here, and like that I'm meant to make a difference in actual humanity, not like my lifetime, but generations to come, because of the people I influence now. I think the true revolution is personal growth. So every person who hears this conversation and is like, ooh, I want to grow in this way, right? Like just inspiring. And you're one of my friends who grows and wants to learn and get better. And so that's kind of, we were even talking about this before we started recording, like how I like doing multiple episodes of the same person over years so that we can recognize our growth and hear how we've just created an archive that inspires others to grow. Because I think growth really is sticky. It's something that other people are attracted to.
Hell yeah. My eyes exploded when you said recurring episode because I'm remembering a year ago. And just Lord jeez, I think it's all like exactly a year ago, maybe a week, give or take.
Yeah.
What a journey.
Yeah.
Like the amount of growth in the last year has been for me
What's been
exponential.
your biggest learning takeaway from the quarantine and the pandemic?
Biggest learning takeaway. God, I have a lot. Biggest learning takeaway, it's something about the body. I got to experience so much. Like, but so this coincided every year, every time a year starts, every January, um, when we arbitrarily mark the beginning of a new year, I set a theme for the year. I don't do like a, what's the word that you're
Not
supposed
a
to use?
resolution, it's a
Not a
theme.
resolution.
Same
I
thing.
have a theme. It's it's more vibey. And I don't have 1 month to get it done and then fall off a wagon. There's no such thing. My theme last year was the body. And I didn't really know what it meant. Actually, I did. I was pretty clear on what it meant. It didn't mean diet culture. It didn't mean fitness. It meant I want to be able to listen to my body. I want this to be the year where I actually yield to my body and get very clear about what it's communicating to me. And a year ago right now I was preparing to run the LA marathon. Largely I mean, I was trained, but I wasn't trained for a marathon. I was trained for like 15 miles. I did not train for a marathon, but she was doing it anyway. And I had this, it was sort of wonderful, but also just horrible. It finished. And I was just like, why the fuck did I do that? Like, I remember crossing the finish line. And at that point, I was so depleted of serotonin and whatever dopamine in my body. And I was so tired that I literally was like, okay, cool. Like, you imagine I crossing the finish line, and my cross the finish line was, okay, now I've run a marathon. Go lay down. Like, it was nothing. It was completely neutral event. And and then COVID happened the next week. Lockdowns began. Why do I tell that story? Because the thing I've learned about that was sort of like set the stage. If my goal was to level up in my body, a great way of getting there was to sort of like throw myself into this. That's how I learn anyway. I charge into the thing and then it usually blows up and then I learn the thing about it. So I had that experience, felt like, why did I do that to my body? And how cool is it that my body was able to do that? And it ushered in, when COVID stopped, the world went still. My job ended. I actually had just moved and was in between spaces when COVID arrived, and therefore was literally, and then lost my job. So then was literally displaced. And the only thing I had was getting really still. And suddenly I had free time, and that meant going into nature all the fucking time. And so I started swimming in cold water, and I started hiking, and I started doing all of these things that like excited and woke up my body and got me super, super, super still. The consequence of that months later is that I now feel very in touch with my body, because when the world goes quiet, she's right there. And like, I was able to like learn how to listen, and it led me to many crazy new things. I'm reporting live from Denver instead of LA, which is where I lived a year ago. I followed my body's cues to like a whole nother life, basically.
That's awesome. Your body is, I think, your antenna to the universe. And like when you get still, your body frequently knows the answer. After my breakup, I really recognized that my body was giving me cues that I wasn't listening to about my relationship, which was wild. And then I started just asking myself, what does my body want? And using my body as a pendulum. Like I can just ask my body a yes or no question.
And you never have to make another decision in your life. Your body will tell you.
Yes, exactly.
So cool.
You know what to do in a moment. Ask, what does my body want? And it will tell you if you get still enough and know how to listen.
Yeah. And shout out to the person listening who is like, my body doesn't tell me shit. Like, that's real. That's a real experience. And it's actually like a tool and like a practice.
Mm-hmm.
I survived 8 years of bulimia. I actually mastered the art of not listening to my body. or or like um, and it turns out when you get really still and if you set clear intentions and if you practice, it's so natural in us that it's just right there. The body can tell, the body speaks. It's just right there.
It really does. And you're right. It totally takes like, I mean, I'm very spiritually aligned and very like in my spiritual practice and my body practice because I know how bad it feels to be out of alignment. So it's like, it's kind of like the yuck has turned me towards the yum. I'm like, oh, I'm going to just go here into this land where I'm embodied and not dissociated and not adopting other people's ideas of what success is. I'm really passionate about defining it for yourself and pursuing it for yourself. And honestly, like this time has allowed me enough space to really recognize and enough contrast from anywhere I've ever lived to really see like, oh, actually being a lawyer made me incredibly sick physically and mentally. I didn't realize it at the time. I was just like, oh, my body's having these weird issues with digestion and like making it okay in my head. When now that I have enough space with like understanding what my lifestyle has done and following my true path and all of that, honestly, like going through the aerobics video shoot that we did together. Thank you for being in my video, by the way. I love it. I saw a clip the other day of you diving with Manny, and I was just like, okay.
That crew is so good.
It was such a good crew. And like after that, I was going home from the equivalent of doing a half marathon. That's what my mom said her watch told her after the day. And I was going home and I was like, this was harder than studying and passing the bar in 2 states, like just producing this workout video. And it really showed me like what my potential was, you know what I mean? And like living out my potential. And I was never living out my potential when I was a lawyer because that's somebody else's thing. That's not my thing. And I feel so grateful now to just be it's like I'm reaping the fruits of like probably what somebody out there hasn't even started yet, which is just body acceptance and little habits every day to just align yourself. And you don't adopt all the habits one day, you just do it one at a time, bit by bit. And if you get 1% better every day, you're 3,700% better by the end of the year.
It's so true. And it's so slow and it's like such an end game. And then you think, oh, I'm healthier. I have a better body-mind connection than I've ever had. And then 2 years later, you're like, I have a better, like, remember when I was so disconnected 2 years ago? And now I have a better body health connection than I've ever had. It's like, it's very Capricorn. It's very slow and steady and end game.
Yes. And it's so important. This is the thing I learned about Capricorns. We have to stop on the mountain climb and turn back and see how far we've come. It's so important.
No, that's right. Yeah, that's true. Especially because Capricorn can be quite critical of not being where it wants to go. And also sometimes you just get a fucking flood of downloads onto and things like the amount of growth I experienced in 2 months in early COVID. What's funny is my COVID had like a reverse curve from many of my friends, which was that in the beginning of COVID, a lot of dear friends were having a hard fucking time. I mean, we were in collective trauma and grief, which is so valid. I was not in that space. I was in like, my wildest dream is that the whole world is collapsing and I can run away into the wilderness. Thank the Lord. Praise Jesus. See you never. I had an amazing time. It wasn't until I had to reintegrate into life sort of this fall. I made a move to a new city. I started working again. Once I started reintegrating, then the grief came, then the processing came. But it was cool. So, you know, we're on this Capricorn climb. And also sometimes she's really good and you just run into a spring well full of gorgeous water and you get to like splash about in it and I think really quick growth can happen sometimes. But I don't think you get to choose. I think it just will decide for you.
I think the growth curve is honestly like you can put in 1% more effort every day. And your results are going to be, you just have to focus on the effort. Like the results you can't control, but sometimes that growth does come really fast and you might not even see it. You might just be living it, right? And then eventually you take the pause and look back and you're like, oh, wow.
Very that.
Yeah.
I have a segue
into
2 things that are important to me at this moment as we talk about this. I listened to a great interview today. I never remember anyone's name, but I'll text it to you later if you have show notes. I don't know. An amazing South African American psychologist has done all of this fabulous work about toxic positivity. How dangerous it is when we, in so many of our self-help and or healing communities, it's a tool that's readily activated of, okay, what's the hard thing you're going through? Okay, cool. Now turn that paper over and write down what you're grateful for. And then focus on how grateful you are and how good you actually have it, and how everything's actually really, really good. And then you'll be fine. And she has enormous amounts of data to push against that and essentially effectively call bullshit on that. And I love hearing this because as a recovering over optimistic, suppress my feelings person, and just that, as that person, it's always easier to focus. And as someone who's engrossed in or integrated into lots of healing communities, it's easy for us to go to 2020 was so healing and awesome and so good and la la la. And also, that's the incomplete story, right? It was really fucking hard. Learning to build a relationship with your body is really hard. For me, it's been horrible and wonderful, but also like painful and lonely. And my year has been lonely and also amazing. And both of those things are true. And so I want to just mention that. And also the real segue that I'm very excited about right now is that this is my concern for Britney. Britney is trapped. I mean, Britney is a person who is now in this conservatorship, isn't allowed to speak out. And I've just observed from her feed that like infinite and endless positivity, which is stunning and beautiful and so Sagittarian and heartful and gorgeous. And I don't think she's allowed to actually tell the truth. I mean, she isn't. She's legally not allowed to tell the truth. Someone can edit her. And I don't know, I'm not Britney. I don't get to say what she's going through, but like, it breaks my heart to see someone that might only be allowed, be it from other authorities or herself, to like be grateful and happy and emojis all the time and not be able to be like, remember that time y'all fucking killed me and I survived? Like, she's never gotten to do that.
I think you're so right. And also, like, I talked about this at length. There's an episode I did about shadow work, I think back in November, but like, it's so important to like be present with the things that aren't necessarily positive, right? Like most things need your attention and your love. They don't necessarily need you to be mucking around in them, right? Like if you stay in the darkness too long, you stay in the darkness, right? That's momentum. And it's kind of like quicksand, you know what I mean? Like you can recognize, okay, I'm walking through mud and I have to walk very slow right now, but you can keep walking. But you don't have to like paint it all. It's not all rainbows and sunshine. For me, the quarantine honestly has been my real life. Like I just lucked in at luck. It felt like getting clobbered by the universe at my 2019, you know, like, and so when the
Yeah, right
like, oh, you mean everyone is stuck at home, so there is no FOMO left for me to have like this FOMO free year where like I just get to like continue my healing path that I've been on. Oh, okay. And like, and then I didn't get to go on tour, which is fine, nobody else did, and like whatever, right? Like I have so much touch hunger. Like I really like I crave, I get a lot of intimacy in my platonic relationships, which I'm super grateful for, but there truly isn't a match for like physical intimacy, you know, like, and even like with friends, I was thinking about this. If I could travel and see my friends, I would at least get some couch cuddles, you know? And like, I haven't really like snuggled another human being since like my breakup in 2019. Like it's kind of sad, but like also whatever. I have so much connection and intimacy in other ways that like in many ways, yeah, like I'm glad I'm doing quarantine at 42, or I guess I was 41 when it started, but like I'm glad I'm doing it in this time because I have so much life I've lived and I have so many good memories and I have so much life to look forward to. So it's almost like it's like my mid-season break. Like it's my writer's strike.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazing. first quick question. Are you on touching terms with your mother right now during quarantine?
I mean, yeah, we're potted together. I was
You're
not raised
not
in
colors.
we're not.
You're not, my family's not either. Like we hug each other because we hug each other very clearly because that's what you're supposed to do, and it would be
Hello
weird
and
not
goodbye.
to. My dad's hug is like,
yeah,
and he means it, but it's like that's not how we were raised. Okay, just because she's on the mind. Fucking Britney Spears lives in a world where she is been quarantined for 10 years of her adult life.
yeah.
Where in fact it's not chill or casual for her to leave the house, where it is always an event, where there are 18,000 restrictions on her. And I just was thinking about this idea that that must be fucking lonely.
It must be lonely. Where does she live? Does she live in Vegas or LA?
Yes and yes.
Oh, is that where the marble floor is in Vegas?
You
She's
know
always
what?
in a marble.
My answer is yes, but I'm wondering if I'm wrong. It has to be because that's the house she's been posting at since forever when she was in residency.
Oh,
But I
okay.
know she has a house in Hidden Hills in LA. I don't know which one is the one she always posts from. I think it's Vegas.
Yeah,
I'm
probably.
gonna research.
Great.
Anyway,
I'm also curious how often she gets to see her kids, if she does at all. And they must be teenagers by now. Which makes me feel old that Sean Preston might be that old.
can I tell you one last Britney story
Yes.
related to those children?
Uh-huh.
Once upon a time, when I was in that singing group I told you about, when we'd come to a city, we'd do random gigs during the day to just like pick up extra money, and we would go to these super bougie private schools that would hire us because we were Yale kids.
Uh-huh.
And one of them was like the Obamas. I got to go to their school and sing for them.
Yeah.
But more important, sorry, Sasha, is going to LA. We were going to sing the national anthem at a Dodgers game, and we go to the school for a day gig, whatever, assembly, inspired the children. And Britney's kids are in the audience, there and there. And I'm like, oh! Totally there, totally in the assembly, very exciting. I immediately knew who they were. And then, I had to play it real chill as like little Sean Preston's playing on the playground. So that happened. It gets better. That night, just like being a homosexual, it gets better. That night, we sang the national anthem at the gig at the Dodger Stadium. I'm very high. I smoked something before, which at the time was very fun because then we go and we're doing that. And then all of a sudden we sing our song. We're coming off the thing. And my friend Spencer's like, McKay, nudge. And he's like, Britney Spears. And I turn and that is Britney. She's right there. She's like 15 feet away from me, right there at the dugout, wearing her cute little cutoffs and a little tank top and a baseball cap. She's looking fab and awesome. And it was one of those things where, it was like just silence and like deep respect. It was like sacred. It was like immediate deep respect and space. And then my friend Spencer was like, aren't you gonna get like a picture? And I was like, no, absolutely not. Like no. It was just like this moment of freeze. Britney turns and goes into the dugout or goes under the thing next to the dugout. She's gone. But the story's not over because you turn over here and there are two little boys pointing at us and saying, oh, no. And lo and behold, it's her kids. And they're there with Lynn, her mother. And then they invite us over and they're like, oh, come over. The boy said that you were at their school today. And we're like, yeah, we were. Oh my God. Da, da, da. And Lynn's like, then it was picture time. It was like, oh, do you want to get some pictures somewhere? My friend Lex has on his phone, because mine was probably shattered at the time, those photos. But we got to like say hi to them. It was great. And Lynn was like, it told, these are Britney's kids, as if I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, thanks, I know. But also she called her Britney and did not use Spears, which was funny. Like, it wasn't like, these are Britney Spears. There was no context given. She's like, my child is Britney, you know what's up. And that's my story, the end.
Wow. That's profound. I had never heard that story before. Thanks for sharing that. McKay, before we end, I would love for you to do a visual talk through of the Free Britney dance move I mean, we can show it for the YouTube, but just like talk us through one arm, both arms out.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a prayer. It's a movement prayer called the Free Britney.
That's true. It's best done to the song Toxic, though you could choose any of your Britney songs. It's a thing. I teach dance cardio like Bevan, and I make up moves, and this one's really fun. So you go one arm. Okay, I'm going to talk you through this. Mercury and Virgo, don't fail me now. One arm, you bend your elbow, and you put it in front of your body. So I'm looking down. I'm like, I'm checking the time. That's what I'm doing. Pick up, you look at your wrist, you're checking the time. Now you send that watch up above your head and then behind. And then you let it fall. And then you check the time on your other watch, on the other arm. And then you send that up above, up over your face, up over your head, and back. And then, 1, 2, and then you do it together. You check the time at the same time. So boom, your wrists come together, you go up and over, and this time you explode out from behind. So your arm, so I'm trying to think if anyone listening to this could get that, but basically check the time, send it over your head, check the time, send it over your head. Both arms together, send them over your head, and burst.
And then you just keep practicing until you look like a pop princess while you're doing it.
Oh yeah, and you can do it, you can hit it hard, it can be soft, you can do it tall, you can do it small, a lot of variations available.
McKay, how can people find out about MmmmBop Cardio?
They can go to MmmmBopCardio.com, actually. Eventually I'll have an Instagram, I think, but go to MmmmBopCardio.com and or text Bevan and I'll get you an email, honey buns.
McKay is one of those low-key, very magical humans that is just putting out miracles. And so I am so excited. And also you're going to school. Why don't we just preview it for people in the long game about what your schooling plans are in 8 months? I'm so excited about this.
Doing a thing I never thought I'd ever do, but it all feels so right and I'm so excited. I'm going to be a body psychotherapist. So I'm going to learn somatic psychotherapy starting in the fall at a cool hippie school called Naropa University, founded by Jack Kerouac and the Beats.
What? Wow.
Roots. It's like a Buddhist framework. It's kind of cool.
Oh, I'm excited to learn more about that.
But yeah, body, yaddy, yaddy.
Body, yaddy, yaddy. It's all in the body. I love you so much. Thanks for existing.
Oh my God. Thank you too. This is really fun.
This is fun. Thanks for being on my podcast again and sharing your wisdom with the world. And I just cherish you. I adore you. I'm excited to just see what your life unfolds into and to, you know, bring the podcast babes along.
Thank you. And let me just tell you that you living in the space you currently live in is serving full gypsy fantasy. Full Bali gypsy fantasy. And that's really right.
Thank you. I used to listen to this playlist that was all songs about living on the road, and now I feel like even though I don't live on the road, I haven't actually slept out of my bed even one time since the quarantine, but I feel like I get to live in this like beautiful
fuck, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. I think it's awesome. So high five. A little nugget to end on is that I'm not going to show you because the visuals won't be right, but I'm watching the sunset behind the Rocky Mountains right now. That's cool. They're far away, but they're right there.
Yeah, I can see even today. I saw some Canadian mountains covered in snow from Fort Townsend that are like pretty far away, but look pretty close. Yeah.
Okay, it's the moment you put up the camera. It doesn't, but that's why I'm not going to do it. It's disappointing, but they're right there and they're really pretty. Aww. Thank you, Bevan.
Yay, I love you.
I love you too.